Welcome back to CPAC Now. I'm Matt Schlapp, along with my beautiful wife, Mercedes.
Yeah.
We just had a great week with our family, Holy Week, not a more important week on the calendar year.
Yeah, Easter was just wonderful. We're out in the countryside, out in the mountains. Let me tell you something. The mountain folks out here, they love Trump, they love freedom, and they love America. So it's really been wonderful to be out of the city. And the latest news from our 9-year-old Lucia, she now wants to buy a horse.
True.
But what's so great about her is that she's convinced that she's going to work all summer long to buy this horse. So we're trying to set up a capitalist system here in the Schlapp household.
But as conservatives, we believe that we should also be practical. And there ain't enough working hours in the summer for her to pay for a horse. So I have told her that as conservatives are want to do, I've told her the reality that she's going to have to ask for someone to give her a free horse, which is the way it works now.
Maybe a stuffed animal horse might actually work. But
we're actually, sweetie, we're in the home of Bill and Sarah Walton.
Yes.
Bill Walton's one of our board members, has a wonderful place out here in the Blue Ridge Mountains where people vote red and are normal.
I know, it's incredible, and that's why we look so relaxed for the first time in about 4 years. But we also want to introduce a very special guest, someone who we just have really spent time with and is part of the CPAC family and comes from a very critical state, the state of Georgia, which is right now in a bit of a disarray. So let's introduce former state representative Vernon Jones, founder of Waking Up America.
He is waking up America. He's starting in Georgia.
I think I'm still trying to wake up. But founder of Waking Up America, Vernon Jones, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, you and Matt both. And I'm glad that you guys got some much needed rest and we're ready to keep going. We're going to keep waking up this country. We're going to wake it up using you guys, your information, your ways of communicating with people. And you know what I love about you guys? You stand for what you believe in, and you've been a big help not only to the president, but to this country. So I'm just honored to be a part of your broadcast. It's amazing being with you guys.
Well, we're trying to make sure that CPAC doesn't just stop at the conference, that so many people get to watch. We had over 30 million people watching President Trump's speech. So many people tuned in to all the great panels and events that we had at CPAC. And it's why we believe that CPAC Now, the show we're doing today, and we do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, is so important to continue to talk about the issues that matter and talk about the news that's happening and really inform the folks out there of why we have to continue to speak up and not be silenced by the left. But let's get into what is happening in Georgia. Can you give us an update, Vernon? We've seen this bill pass in Georgia. Governor Kemp has supported the bill, but we're seeing a lot of boycotts happening as well, whether it be Delta Airlines. Now you've seen the Major League Baseball pull out of Atlanta and move out to go do their event in Denver. Give us a rundown of what's happening in Georgia right now.
Well, first of all, obviously Georgia is still on people's minds and will be on their minds for years to come because Georgia is important. So goes Georgia, so goes this country. And I said that before. You know, we had a challenge of lack of leadership in the state of Georgia. When you saw the elections in 2020, both including the runoff, that was created by none other than Stacey Abrams. Stacey Abrams did a good job when she lost her election, lost badly, by the way. She cut a backroom deal with the Secretary of State's office, as well as the governor knowing about it. They signed an agreement that really created that whole cloud of election fraud in Georgia. And the lack of leadership, I'll be clear about this. The governor cost us losing the president, not winning in Georgia, and losing 2 United States Senate seats. And when he had an opportunity to call a special session to try to get into this and address it, he didn't. And Matt, you know this as well as Mercy, Georgia's constitution, like many other states' constitution, only the members of the General Assembly can change election laws. Well, we saw this happen with the executive side of government, and they cannot do that. They usurped our authority and allowed this to happen that created all this mess. Now, we lost, again, 2 U.S. senators and a president. We lost the All-Star game. I mean, what else is it? And when the governor did come on board to sign this legislation, I think it's important. It's a step in the right direction, but he didn't do it. The legislature cleaned up what he didn't do. And in fact, it didn't go far enough, because right now people will tell you they will not feel comfortable, do not feel comfortable, I should say, with the current voting system. They want to see it replaced. And when you see like a Major League Baseball and Coca-Cola, and by the way, Coca-Cola stepped out and said that this was Jim Crow, this legislation. They didn't read the legislation, obviously. But it's curious to me, how can Coca-Cola say they want to stop this so-called suppressing the black vote, when in fact it's telling its employees to act less white? Now, what more racist than that is?
That's right.
You know, nobody said anything about that. And then for Major League Baseball, with their headquarters being in New York, isn't it ironic that they have no absentee ballot voting at all? Now, is that suppressing the black vote? Why don't they, if they want to show a sign of solidarity or whatever else, why don't they move their headquarters out of where? New York, the state of New York. And then we have Joe Crow Biden, who's talking about Jim Crow, when in fact his party, in fact, he was a part of the group that created the Jim Crow laws from the start. And to hear him just flat lie and say that our polls are closing early, flat lies. They're not closing earlier. When he's saying that we have no drop boxes anymore, that's a flat lie. When he says that it's Jim Crow because you're requiring an ID, that's demeaning to black people, for one, as if they can't afford a $20 ID. But you know what, Matt, it's free here. You don't have to buy it. And it's just demeaning to black people. This was a high-tech way of Democrats responding to President Trump, because he put a crack in that wall. He started getting minority votes. He had black men and others started waking up. You saw what happened down at your CPAC. The number of black people were there, the number of candidates running across this country. And President Trump did this, and they are trying to use this as a way to do what? To scare black people back on the plantation and not vote Republican.
You know, I'm so tired of hearing about the Democrats equating the Republican Party to Jim Crow. Jim Crow was a creation of the Democratic Party, and I have a very specific question for you. If the Republican Party is the party of racism and bigotry and Jim Crow, why did you just join it?
Well, first of all, I didn't leave the Democratic Party. They left me, because they're pushing this far left narrative. They're moving towards socialism. They don't want and value an African-American man or woman who can think independently, who can vote independently, who can make decisions for themselves. They want to keep us crippled, keep us down, give us a program, no job, no opportunities of businesses. And I didn't want to be a part of that. That's why I said that I brought a brand new party to the grand old party, brand new people, brand new opportunities, and brand new people. Why? Because the Republican Party embraced people like me and you with independent thoughts that, you know, we want to be entrepreneurs. We want freedom of speech. We want to be able to protect our Constitution. Those important things like school of choice, those things are important. In the Democrat Party, you know what? They just want our votes to carry a liberal agenda. And Matt, let me tell you what they're doing now. They are literally right now using this, again, this high-tech method. They've gone from getting black votes to carry their liberal agenda. Now they're literally recruiting blacks that will carry their agenda and helping them get elected, so they can't hide behind the bigotry of what they're doing. This is high-tech, and it's dividing this country.
Well, now we've got this bill passed with Major League Baseball leaving. You know, what impact will? Let's be real. Major League Baseball will be cozy with the Chinese and with the communists and cozy with the Cuban dictatorship.
That's right.
And yet they've created this whole frenzy around the Georgia law. To your point, I don't even think they've read the law. I think they're just trying to be part of these woke organizations because they're getting so much pressure from the left. And it just shows that the right, we need to be putting pressure on these companies to say, you're only listening to part of the American public, that there's so many of us who believe that it's important to put safeguards in our elections and ensure that we're able to expand voter access and ensure that there's voting IDs in place, which a vast majority of Americans agree with having voting IDs. If you need a voting ID, if you need an identification to get a COVID vaccine, you need an identification to vote. But you tweeted this out, and I thought it was a really strong tweet. You said, I commend the Governor Kemp for his courage to stand up to the Major League Baseball. Only if he had displayed the same courage months ago and the eagerness to ensure the integrity of our election, we'd still have control of the U.S. Senate. I think you share what I share, which is the frustration in Georgia that, first of all, the campaign wasn't even tracking that Georgia was a battleground state, that they said they had it all under control, and then it completely fell apart. Your reaction?
Well, obviously, our governor, Brian Kemp, did not show the leadership. It was the lack of his leadership. He didn't get out and campaign for President Trump like he should have. He didn't get out and help President Trump across this country. If I were governor, I've been all across this country. I would have been in Michigan, in Arizona, in Wisconsin, Minnesota, helping this president. And then when the stuff hit the fan, if you will, where was the governor? He cut and ran. The Secretary of State cut and ran. The Attorney General cut and ran. They cut and ran on the president. And you know what? They're the reason why, because they were the ones who signed that agreement.
That's right.
That allowed Stacey Abrams to do what she did.
Let me ask you a question on that, because it's really been eating at me. You'll know more than anybody. Is it that the governor and your Secretary of State just was cavalier about this consent decree, and they thought President Trump would win the state anyway, and they'd be able to make a little peace with Stacey Abrams, even though there's no peace you could make with Stacey Abrams? Were they just cavalier and thought they'd win anyway, or did they want to lose? They want the president to lose?
You know what? They were more afraid of Stacey Abrams of running against the governor than they were afraid of the president losing. And that's the whole problem. I am not afraid of Stacey Abrams. Many of us are not afraid of Stacey Abrams. She created this nightmare. And you know, when you look at the Major League Baseball League, let me give you an example how she is hurting African Americans and African American businesses. For the first time, Cobb County, where the stadium is located now, they elected its first Black female chairperson. They've invested in $2 million to be a part of this Major League Baseball. Black businesses are hurt. Oh, by the way, they just elected their first Black sheriff and their first Black clerk of court. A lot of Black people there, a lot of Black children and white children were looking forward to seeing these Major League Baseball players. It's stolen their dreams from them. This only come every so often. They hurt those small Black businesses and other businesses too, Black or white, who were counting on this, who bought paraphernalia, who was getting ready for this. They can't get their money back. They're stuck with these goods and these items. So Stacey Abrams really, through being led by Jim Crows and through these liberals, they are hurting Black people. Matter of fact, they suppress Black people having opportunities during this Major League Baseball tournament.
And isn't it true, one other quick follow-up, isn't it true that Donald Trump got historic levels of support from African Americans and Hispanics? And so when the left, the woke, liberal, white left, pushes suppression of these Black voters who voted for Trump and Republicans, that point is never made. There is a growing number of minorities voting for people on the Republican ticket.
But Matt, let's think about it. Black and whites are being suppressed and depressed and intimidated by white liberals. I can tell you how. The people are afraid to put the bump stickers on. They're losing their jobs if they what they feel like, their party affiliation, their political ideology. That should be a hate crime where they're treating us. The left is really treating us with hate. They're attacking police. They're literally shooting young children, like the one in Atlanta who was 8 years old, little Black girl, the one in New York, 1 year about what, Black Lives Matter, all that left group. They're creating the socialists and this crazy Marxist environment. And at the tip of this spear is Stacey Abrams and George Soros. They are trying to completely take over this country and turn it into a socialist country. And let me tell you, we have to fight no matter what. We have to fight it to the end. And Matt, you're absolutely right what they're doing. They are suppressing the Black voters. Why can't my vote be counted? Why you want to suppress my vote? Why you do not want a system with integrity? How is it that these major league sports teams and Coca-Cola, why do they want to put profit motives over election integrity? It's not about they're with the woke crowd. They're afraid this woke crowd is going to cost them some Cokes being sold or some planes not being ridden on Delta. So they decide, I'm going to cave in. Our governor caved in. Our Secretary of State caved in. They all caved in. But President Trump didn't cave in. CPAC didn't cave in. I didn't cave in. And many of Americans across this country have not caved in. And we're going to fight this to the end. This fight is just getting started. They've awakened a sleeping giant.
Agree.
But Vernon, I mean, is it because the corporations are scared? Are they that dumb that they want to just that they're just deciding, let me just give in? I mean, is that where you think we're headed? Is this, I've never seen corporations so politically skewed to a point that they're being so vocal on these issues.
Well, here's what's happened. Stacey Abrams and her crowd never stopped campaigning. They're using those same ground folks right now. I'm getting text messages, everyone else, they're getting knocked on getting doors knocked on. And they're calling down to these corporate offices as if they're speaking for everybody, putting that pressure. They're using these other folks to call them. Stacey Abrams being paid thousands of dollars from these organizations. Why don't she give that money up and pay for IDs if that's going to cause people not to be able to vote? Why is she doing that? No. When are we going to see how much money these folks are actually paying her? How many different groups she's founded? How many different ways she's getting paid? And the media knows about it. The media knows about it. When Bloomberg gave her that $5 million just to be seen with him. And this is a person supposedly threw black and brown people against the wall and said, black communities are the communities we need to go because that's where the crime is. Well, someone said, what an outrage. This is racist. But why was Stacey Abrams willing to take $5 million to walk around with a racist? Why is she willing to be with Joe Biden, knowing that Joe Biden is the one who hung out with a card-carrying Ku Klux Klan chapter president, who said that Robert Byrd was his idol? Really? And then to say that black people can't think, or they're not as diverse in their thinking like Latinos, and then to come out more recently saying black people more infected by the COVID because we don't know how to go online and get information. Hell, my 4-year-old nephew knows how to go online.
Vernon, and what about the hypocrisy that Donald Trump was defiling the Constitution for asking that only voters that could be verified to be in the count, including signature verification? But yet Stacey Abrams loses the governorship of the great state of Georgia and never concedes, and no one ever brings that up. Hillary Clinton told Joe Biden he should never concede, but when they do that, they're just fulfilling their democratic options.
Well, not only that, to them, when President Trump wants to know, just like anybody who run for public office, was he treated fairly? Are all the votes counted accurately and properly? But then they make that into where he's been investigated on a phone call that, you know, the Washington Post had to retrieve because why? They were too damn lazy to go and ask for the actual transcript so they can see exactly what happened. But that was intentional. But the damage is done now. Look how it's created an atmosphere that the president did something wrong with that phone call. Remember the pattern. The phone call he had with Ukraine and other phone calls. Oh, here's another phone call with the Secretary of State. This is a pattern of what they're doing to destroy this president, but it's not working. I'll say this too, Matt. When I look at what head liars say, and I call them head liars because these headlines are head liars. When I look at that, this is a part of the left who really want to take away seriously our constitutional rights. They want us to be able to say what they want to say. They don't want us to say what we want to say. And it's not good for America. But when I look at Georgia's election laws now, there's nothing in there that suppresses anybody. Not a single thing in there. As a matter of fact, it expands it some ways. You remember they said, well, you can't serve water. That's not true. You just can't serve water within 150 feet of the polling place. You have those rules in place now because it potentially could cause election campaigning there. So that was a lie. They said the polls closed earlier. No, they didn't. They closed at 7. And the mailbox, by the way, the drop-off box is in a much more secure place where it's guarded and is washed, and you can't do that ballot harvesting. So is that really suppression? No, that is really trying to distract us from the real issue. And the real issue is, Matt, I'm telling you, they do not want African Americans to vote Republican. It is happening every day. There's an African American female just announced to run as Republican conservative from Pennsylvania. These are the fruit from Donald Trump's page. When he planted that seed, he said, look, what the hell do you have to lose? And a lot of black people woke up to that, and it scared the hell out of the liberals.
I'll tell you, I don't know about you, sweetheart, but we will not be watching the All-Star game in our household. I will not be watching it. And I find it so hypocritical that a sport that has an umpire, several umps on the field to determine whether a ball is fair or foul, whether a runner is in or out, whether a ball thrown is a strike or a ball. They can have those rules but they refuse this country to be able to say a ballot is a legal ballot or an illegal ballot. That is the most hypocritical, disgusting, obnoxious thing I think I've ever heard.
But Matt, what about this? How many Black and Hispanic and Asian owners are there of the American League Baseball? All those teams, they are so concerned about diversity. Where are they? I'd like to know how many owners. I'm not talking about first basemen or left fielder. How many owners are out there? How much business do they do with minorities? Really? So if you really care that much about it, Major League Baseball, then you would do something about that, cleaning your house first before you talk about somebody else's house. And let me tell you, the Masters is this weekend. I'm going to the Masters. When they're talking about getting the Masters out of Georgia, I want them to get those slave masters out of the Democratic Party. That's where the real masters are. But nobody wants to talk about that.
That's awesome.
That's a great point. And with Major League Baseball, they're moving it to Denver, not what I would consider a diverse city in hardly any way. So it's interesting. I think the backlash that Major League Baseball will suffer because of this move, but it only makes us, I think, continue to talk about this issue. You know, I think one of the things that really important to point out about the bill, now the election law, is that they actually expand early voting by adding a second mandatory Saturday. So they're expanding early voting. This goes back to the fact that in Georgia, when you look at the facts itself, it's just ensuring to put those safeguards in place, getting rid of these unsolicited absentee ballots, which we know in many cases leads to problems, but you can request an absentee ballot and receive one. So I think it's a fact that you want to make sure let's move it away from Democrat and Republican. Let's make sure that we just have free and fair elections. And I think what's been unfortunate on the side of the Republican side, and we witnessed this, and our team at American Conservative Union witnessed this when we went down to Georgia for the Senate races, the Democrats were a lot more organized than the Republicans in Georgia. What do you think about that?
Well, let me tell you, obviously they were. The Republicans did not run in a pack like they should have. And that was due, again, to the lack of leadership. You have a sitting governor. You had 2 sitting United States senators. And where was the coalition among the two? And then how Donald Trump had worked with Governor Kemp. And I can tell you, everybody would have said this, that the decision that the governor made to do the interim replacement of Senator Isaacson was not really the people's choice. It wasn't someone who had the experience, the background, the fight. And Doug Collins had all that. But with that being said, let's look at this too. The runoff, people were disappointed. Yes. Many Trumpers were disappointed, and it didn't come back out. And let me tell you, Georgia is not a blue state. It's a red state. Remember, we had 3 people in a runoff, Republicans running statewide. You had 2 United States senators, and you had the public service commissioner. Bubba McDonald won his election. He got more votes than the other 2, and he only spent $500,000. So if Georgia was not a red state, how would Bubba McDonald have won? So it goes to show you that we didn't run in a pack. And another thing too, the Republican candidates, they didn't do like President Trump and really go after the minority vote. You can't put 2 black people in a commercial and say that's your minority outreach and expect some rate of return. And so how they ran their campaigns, look, I am the face of the Republican Party, meaning that new ideas, new ways of doing things, bringing in new people, understanding how you can go against the Democrats. You know what, Matt? I can say to Democrats what I know, to white Democrats, what I know Republicans feel they can't. And I know why, because they'll be called a racist. You literally have Chuck Schumer can call a white Republican a racist. But if the Republican called Chuck Schumer racist, which they do have a valid reason for it, because if you look when Nancy and Chuck took that so-called knee pandering to black people, they had that kente cloth. Well, if anybody in their right mind knows that that kente cloth is representative of the first tribe that started the slave trading. So he's actually promoting slave trading. The media just completely went by that. But you know what? I can look at those white Democrats and call them what they are, whether they're bigots, whether they're racist, whether they're taking black people for granted. I can look at them. I can take the fight to them. And you know what? They're afraid of me because I can pull those woke blacks and those who are waking up by the likes of me and Burgess Owens and many others who are tired of that. We are not victims. We are victors.
So Vernon, just 15 seconds we have left here. Are you going to run for governor?
Well, it depends on what Matt, I'm not going to pay your opinion any attention. I'm going to have a sit down with Mrs. Slap, because, she is on her game. So whatever I'm looking forward to your advice on that. I'm seriously thinking, Matt, and Mercy, I'm seriously thinking, but let me tell you what's driving me. Let me be clear about to even thinking this, because I had moved on. I just don't want to see the liberals come and turn my state into a socialist state or my country. Our freedoms of speech, our Second Amendment, to me, it's important to protect girls' sports. That's important. To me, it's important to have true election integrity. It's important to me for school choice. And so I want to save my state. I want to save my country. And so when you and I finish talking, Mercy, we'll let Matt know what we're going to do.
I think that's a great plan. And we are so blessed to spend this time with you, Vernon. I mean, you're exactly the type of leaders that we need right now to save this country. You see it so clearly that we're in a very dangerous path that we're headed with the Democrats, the socialists, and under this weak president. And I really do think we can win. I do have hope that we can take back America. And with your leadership, I think it will definitely help get us there. So thank you, Vernon. Thank you for joining us. And CPAC, we'll be right back. Welcome back to CPAC Now, America Uncanceled. What a great interview with Vernon Jones. I mean, we hope he's part of Georgia's future in leading that state in the right direction. But we also have now another wonderful guest with us.
Yeah, great member of our CPAC family, one of the big hitters in Congress who takes on everything from the great state of Texas, Congressman Roger Williams. Congressman, thank you for being with us on CPAC Now.
It's good to be with both of you. Thanks for what you're doing.
I know you're in the great state of Texas as we talk. We are in the mountains of Virginia because we try to flee the swamp whenever possible, especially when a week starts with the word holy. We figure it's time to get out of the swamp.
You got to get out of there.
You got to get out of there.
There's definitely an unholy alliance happening in the Democrat Party, won't you say?
I really would say. I mean, I think that the Democrats they got a tiger by the tail. They created the problem. If you think about it, the Democrats and Biden inherited a wonderful economy. They inherited a pretty secure border. And just because it was successful under President Trump, look what they've done the last 3 months with the border and the economy.
Let's dig into the border situation. We're hearing reports now that Biden and his Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, they're basically saying we got to plug in the holes here on the border wall. Does that mean funding for the border wall, despite the fact that that's something that President Biden moved away from early on in his administration?
Well, I think finally they're recognizing it is a crisis, and the wall was very successful. So to see them make this statement, I think they've turned it politically. I think politically they see it as a problem for them. And naturally, if they're going to rebuild the wall and fill up the holes they made in the wall, it's going to require money. So I wouldn't mind voting to continue to the wall funding if that's what they do. But I think it just shows the fact that President Trump was right, President Biden was wrong.
It's amazing to me. Mercy and I both worked for former President Bush. You were a big leader in those campaigns, Roger Williams. There was a time in the Republican Party when securing the border with a wall was controversial. Seems like that's a long, far ago place.
Well, it is a long, but look what's happened between that time. I mean, our sovereignty is being challenged. We're actually inviting people to come over and break the law. We're going to have, as you know, over 1 million people probably come through this border illegal at the rate we're going right now. And a lot has changed, and you have to protect your country, your state, the sovereignty. We all swear to do that. And frankly, right now, I think with the Biden administration actually inviting people to come over here, I think they're breaking the law.
There's also reports that authorities have made fewer arrests and deportations of immigrants in the U.S. who have come here illegally since Biden took action. I think these are just clear indications that Biden's open door policy, open border policy is leading to less arrests, less deportations. Again, you mentioned this is a sign of putting out the welcome mat for illegal immigrants, as in addition to incentivizing drug cartels and human traffickers. Congressman, what do you see? I mean, at the border, we're seeing all these videos. You're getting these photos. Is it really all that? Is it bad?
It's the worst I've ever seen. I've been going to the border almost every year since 2005 when I was Secretary of State of Texas, and it's the worst I've ever seen. I mean, the drug cartels you mentioned are just taking things over down there. We're going to lose a generation of young people due to drugs because of the influx that the drug cartels have. Not to mention how we're treating our young people through sex trafficking and this sort of thing. We got buildings down there, guys, that are 700% capacity. So if just take the room you're in, the room I'm in, and multiply it by 700%, how many people is that? And it's a real issue. And as you know, we don't have the judges down there to give them due process, to turn them back around, and to even give them a court date that they'll never come to. We're releasing people with no court dates, for crying out loud, and we're just releasing them into our country, probably not to be seen again until some of them commit a crime.
You know, this question of immigration, I think alone, if we think of the political implications, people are so upset about this. Even people who aren't Republicans are upset. People that are just in those communities, Congressman Cuellar, your colleagues, upset about it. The people that are impacted by illegal immigration just can't believe what's happening at the southern border. Let me ask you very specifically, do you think this is the kind of issue where Democrats are realizing that they are on the wrong side of this thing?
No question about it. I mean, they're hearing, I can tell you, they're hearing about it from Texans, regardless of what their party persuasion is. They're on the wrong side, because why do you want it? Why do you want to condone illegal behavior? Why do you want people to come over here illegally? Why do you want somebody to make a decision they're going to come to America, and the first decision they make to come to America is to break the law? And it's just not right. And what's happening, guys, is that we got 3,000 people, for example, in the Kay Bailey Hutchinson Center in Dallas. They're 15, 16, 17-year-old young men. They're going to be released shortly. I mean, and when I say released, I'm talking about just let out.
That's right.
I was at one of my sheriff's offices in my district the other day, whose jail is bursting at the seams, waiting for ICE to tell them when to let these people go. And I said, well, when you let them go, what does that mean? He said, well, we let them out that door right there. And he pointed to a door in an office. And he said, they're going to go into the trees. They're going to go into the Main Street America. They're going to go in the towns. They're going to be thirsty. They're going to be hungry. They don't speak English. What are we going to do with these people? And that's the crisis that we have right now. And look, we want everybody to realize the dream, but they got to come through the ports of entry, not between the ports of entry, and tear assets up that Texans and Americans have.
Well, apparently, Congressman, we've got Kamala Harris, who's now the border czar and in charge of handling Biden's border crisis. I don't know about you, but we haven't heard from her on any of these issues. Has Kamala reached out to any of our leaders in Texas?
She's too busy laughing at everything and not taking things serious. It's a shame when she is the person to oversee this, when she is on record, as you know, has called the ICE KKK, and she votes to defund police, and that's the person who's going to be in charge of the border. So that's an issue right there. I'd like to see them get serious and name somebody that understands what's happening at the border and get control, rebuild the wall. And we haven't even talked about that they dismantled catch and release. So now we don't have the judges down there. We don't give them court dates. They just go anywhere, and it's a real problem. It's going to get worse.
And we have this conversion. So it took Donald Trump years, with the help of people like you in Congress, Roger Williams, to fix this border problem. It's not an easy thing to fix. I mean, even if they change their policies, they've created such a mess. It's going to take a long time to get back out of it, even if they make the right decisions. But then this is crossing over with this question of not having to show an ID to vote. This whole idea that showing an ID in America is racist, which I think a clear majority of the American people, something like 70, 80%, think this is common sense. You show an ID to get in any office building. You have to show an ID to have a meeting at the Facebook headquarters or the Google headquarters, but they say not to vote. this is one of the reasons why you should have to show an ID. If you're not legally in America, you shouldn't be able to vote.
Well, look, voting is one of the most precious rights we have. And you brought it up. We all know everywhere we go during 2 or 3 times a day, we've given our ID to somebody to be able to participate. And voter ID, it should be normal. I've always promoted that. Even when I was Secretary of State, you got to show who you are. And if you can't, we have provisional ballots that they'll give you 3 days, and many times in Texas, to go get your stuff together, come back, and we'll count the vote. It can't get any simpler than that. But the fact is, this is all driven again by the border. We got all these millions coming through here, and they want to pass H.R. 1, which says you can vote at 16. They think they're buying votes with this, and in the meantime, they are destroying our country.
Yeah, that's right. And then we have this other question about this woke corporate culture that has said to too many of our Republican friends in Congress that if you raised any questions on all the illegal votes that were in the count in 2020, you're not worthy of their support through their PACs. Now we got Major League Baseball, an entity that's near and dear to Roger Williams' heart because you were in that system as a younger man, even though you still throw a mean strike for the congressional baseball team.
I think he probably can do a better throw than Dr. Fauci.
Yeah, for sure.
The first pick. How about you?
In all seriousness, Roger, what's your reaction to them pulling out of the All-Star game out of Atlanta?
Well, I'm really mad about it because baseball should not be political. Baseball is America's game. Rich people, poor people, all people of ethnicity go to the ball game to relax, enjoy what America's about. And I have a real problem with baseball getting political. Frankly, they've now become an arm of the Democratic Party. They told us that. And my question to some of my friends in the game are, when did you get so smart that you all of a sudden are an expert on elections, for crying out loud, or on voting? And now they're going to take the game, understand, to Denver, and Denver has you got to show who you are to vote in Colorado. It makes no sense. Baseball made a huge mistake by doing this, and it's a personal thing with me because I did play in the Braves organization, and this was the year they were going to honor probably the greatest player of all time, Hank Aaron, in his town, where he set all his records, and everybody loved Hank. So it's a horrible situation for baseball and the fans. And what they did, it looked like to me, they sold out to the sponsors and the unions. Well, where's the fans in this performance? So right. I'm disappointed in Major League Baseball. It should not have happened. They should not be political.
And the baseball fans are red, white, and blue, love America.
Right.
And it's just so unfortunate that everything has become so highly politicized, so divisive. And that doesn't jive well with the Biden unity message. But just a little trivia here, Congressman. So Matthew Schlapp's middle name is Aaron. So do you know where his middle name comes from?
Well, I know he was born when, well, let's see. It probably didn't come from Hank Aaron. Maybe
it did.
Did it come from Hank Aaron? Are you that young?
Two great people, Hank Aaron and Aaron of the Bible. Moses.
That's what I was going to say. As old as you are, Matt, I thought it would be Aaron of the Bible.
It's true, Roger. And let me tell you, when I turn on the news, which I do very infrequently these days, which is why we've started this show called CPAC Now, I never felt so old. I look at this society and I say, what the heck? I would have been so proud if one of my nieces or nephews got a big job in one of these big Fortune 50 companies. Now I'd be so sad for them because it feels like they want to make being a Republican illegal.
Well, they do, and they're making up rules as they go along. And this H.R. 1, if it passes, will make it hard for Republicans to have any say in anything. And one other thing I'd like to bring up that I'm concerned about is our universities, our schools are not teaching our kids history. They're all going from the left side of the book, and the faculties are trying to run the schools right now, and that's a dangerous thing. And I see it firsthand.
Yeah, the indoctrination from the left in these public schools and some of these private schools, it's shocking. And what they're also using are the social media platforms, obviously, to sell this leftist woke propaganda, infiltrating the minds of so many of these young people that don't understand the dangers of socialism, don't understand the dangers of tyranny, that are falling trap to this Marxist type of ideology, which I think is so destructive for America.
No, it is, and they get it at an early age now. And unfortunately, in many cases, a lot of parents are working 2 jobs or whatever, and they can't sit down and talk to their children and get involved with school and that sort of thing. So that's a real issue too. I think we as conservatives have really got to address as our educational process from kindergarten forward.
Roger Williams, you were with us as we moved CPAC from the swamp to Orlando, Florida. And I want to publicly ask your opinion. We're doing a lot of due diligence of having a big CPAC in Texas. I assume you think that'd be a good idea.
That's a great idea. Texas is wide open for business and wide open for CPAC.
So we're looking at Austin, we're looking at Dallas, we're checking with these hotels. Here's our deal with these hotels. We don't want them to pester us too much about a bunch of useless regulations. We all want to be safe and take care of our own health care. I think that Red America is just busting to be able to come together and talk about this socialism that they're seeing and the changes they want to get made. You agree with that?
I totally think so. I think a lot of people are engaged now that maybe were not before, but they finally see that this may be our generation's Valley Forge, and we've got to stand up. We've got to stand up and not stand down, because the liberal left will get in your face. The liberal left will lie. The liberal left will try to embarrass you, and we just can't let that happen. So we need to go somewhere. Texas would be great. We don't have a mask issue right now in Texas. The weather's good. So I think it'd be great to have CPAC come to the great state of Texas.
Well, as a Floridian, I'm very biased, but I have to say Texas would be my second choice. But since we've already done it in Florida, we're really, really working hard to do CPAC Texas, because what we have found, Congressman, is there is a pent-up demand for people to come together, to be united, to be prepared for the battles that lie ahead. And as you are such a freedom fighter, we are so glad that you are being such a strong leader in addressing these issues that matter for the American people and for the people of Texas. So we want to just let me give you 30 seconds, final thoughts, what you'd like to leave with our CPAC family.
Well, I just like to tell the CPAC family and all, we're grateful for your leadership, for the Schlapp's leadership. But this is an important time in our country. And, you know, I think it was Winston Churchill said, in every man or woman's life, there comes a moment you're tapped on the shoulder to do something great. What a shame it would be for that tap to come and not be ready for that moment of greatness. And I believe the tap is coming to conservatives to do the right thing. And President Bush told us, you remember when he said, we will not falter, we will not fail. We have been tested. We will pass this test. So I think we're getting a tap on our shoulder. I think we're being tested. I think conservatives are up to the charge. And we've got great leaders and people like yourself. I'm willing to stand out there too. We can turn our country around in 2022. It very well may be the most important election of our lifetime.
Yeah, amen, brother. And I do think that what's happening on the border alone is really waking people up. All this socialism, the Biden administration is actually doing what they said they would do, which in some ways is so unusual in politics, but it's kind of scary when you see what the effect.
They didn't false advertise, that's for sure.
No, not at all.
And I think people are realizing all of a sudden, and just wait till people get their tax when they see what the new tax bills are going to look like, and everybody's going to get a tax increase. What it's going to do, they may think twice about how they voted.
That's exactly
right. I think the big word for Biden is massive. That seems to be his best word. Massive infrastructure plan, massive relief plan. Question is, who's going to pay for it? It seems like all of us are going to pay for it.
We are. And what does Biden say? Come on, man.
Come on, man. All right. Well, thank you, Congressman Roger Williams. It's so wonderful to have you with us on CPAC Now. And to all of you watching, make sure to tell your friend about this great show. It's really gaining a lot of traction out there. And remember to follow us at CPAC on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all the other social media platforms, Parler. We're out there. We are going to continue to talk to you from our hearts, letting you know what's happening here in America with the very best leaders of our nation. So that we thank you all for joining us. God bless and good night.